Lauri Thorne, who would eventually take up the Americanized name of Larry Thorne, is one of the most astounding warriors from modern history. He served in Finland during the Winter War, he was part of the Waffen-SS so that he could keep fighting the Bolsheviks, and finally he found service with the United States in Vietnam. From the snowy mountains of Finland, the hellscape of the Eastern Front, and the humid jungles of Southeast Asia, Larry made a name for himself. War was his mistress and his life. The man left this world without a wife or any children, just a flame of glory that was finally, unfortunately, stomped out in the far-from-home Quang Nam province. Born in 1919, Larry was part of the Finnish Reserve when the Soviets declared their unjustified war against the Finnish. They broke their non-aggression pact, signed in 1932, and moved to conquer Finland with millions of Red Army soldiers. The Finnish were taken by surprise. Not only was their manpower limited, it would take time to mobilize. Even if they were to set up a courageous defense, they were so outnumbered that the odds were stacked against them. What hope did they have? Well, the Winter War was a spectacle. You had Finns outnumbered 5-1, massacring waves of Russians. Heroes were forged in that cold machine of death, that front line of mass assault. One of those heroes was Lauri, who led not just your usual detachment of men, but instead commanded a unit of soldiers on skis. They would ride into battle on skis, using them to outmaneuver the Soviets and cut off their supply lines. They were so mobile, they could pull off guerrilla operations and still return to the actual front in time to support their brothers against another mass wave attack. Needless to say, Larry was a real thorn in Russia's side. When the war ended, he wanted to stay a thorn in Russia's side. He had a real bloodthirst for the Bolsheviks, like many men at that time did. He saw an opportunity with the Germans, so he went and joined up with them. He became part of the Finnish Waffen-SS alongside other volunteers, one of the many, and I mean many, foreign battalions eager to be part of the Eastern Front. While often we think of the SS as a bunch of well-dressed, genocidal supervillains, the reality is that many SS divisions were simply foreign soldiers who had volunteered to fight for Germany. Like Larry, many saw it as their only option to bring hell to the Reds. Now, he didn't lead ski troops with the Germans, but he did lead a machine gun team. Without his skis, he still had a lot of courage. He led his team to pierce through the front line to save a company commander from an ambush. This daring move earned Larry the Iron Cross, but it also earned him a step on a landmine, which sent him out of the war and into the hospital. This wasn't Thorne's end, no. He left just as eager to fight as ever. With Finland now joining the war on Germany's side, he returned to his homeland, where he set up a team of 60 to 70 men called Detachment Thorni. With his detachment, he went on raid after raid, attack after attack. Larry's ski warriors were so effective at sabotage and recon that, well, the Soviets really wanted him dead. 3 million Finnish marks. That wasn't the reward of Finland to their hero Larry, but the bounty placed on his head by the USSR. He was alone when it came to bounties too. No other Finnish commander had the privilege, the renown, the recognition to have a bunch of Soviet money strapped onto his head. When Finland eventually fell to the Russians, Larry went to Berlin, where he got further training in sabotage. He came home once more and did a lot of sabotage. Prison ended up becoming a second home, but he escaped jail 3 times, until eventually he secured asylum in the United States. Changing his name from Lauri to Larry, he stopped being a warrior for just a while, taking up carpentry, and while I'm sure Larry was a good carpenter, it wasn't his life's calling. No, Larry was a great warrior, and that was what he lived to do. Before war in Vietnam even broke out, he enlisted in 1954 as a private in the U.S. Army. Despite his former experience as a renowned officer, he started his career as a private, perhaps trying to humble himself. As we know, the humble are exalted, and Larry became one of the first Green Berets. By the end of the 1950s, he was leading covert missions around the world. In Iran, he led a squad to secure classified data from a crashed plane. Sounds simple, right? But 3 missions had attempted this before, and all 3 of them had failed. Now, Larry wasn't the kind of guy to come home with a failure, so he parachuted in with his men, climbed up a mountain, got what he needed, and got out without ever being caught. After this, he'd end up running through the jungle. Part of Mac V SOG, he served for 2 tours in South Vietnam. Non-conventional warfare was Larry's specialty, and while there was no way to ski into battle in the rainy landscape of Southeast Asia, it was the best he could get. He didn't need skis for recon anymore anyway. As he had a Seahorse chopper, he flew himself to gather the intelligence he needed for planning out a mission. That's right, Larry would go out and fly, plan out his mission from the helicopter, then come home, brief his men, and then back in another chopper he would go, so he could personally lead his newest piece of art. Of course, a man can only win so much. Larry went on one last mission on the 18th of October 1965. He wasn't even in Vietnam anymore, but Laos, flying across the border in a chopper. As he helped his teams land on the LZ, he waited for the helicopter to circle back around to join them, but the weather just ended up being way too cloudy, not in their favor. The helicopter got lost and vanished, and like that, the legendary Larry Thorne was MIA. But Larry was an artist. His mission was still a success, even if he'd never be seen again. His men got out of there alive and ended up calling in 51 airstrikes against Ho Chi Minh Trail supply lines. Eventually, Larry was seen again. His body was discovered in chopper wreckage during the 90s. The helicopter had went down. It took an accident, not an enemy, to take Larry's life. Larry Thorne is the definition of a warrior.